Hi guys, welcome to video number 3 during this lockdown period. Today we're going to be drawing a photo. Could be a family photo or a photo of friends, or even just a photo that you find from the newspaper or something like that. These videos are designed so that if you've just gone into lockdown and you're in Sydney or someplace like that and you've got no art materials and you don't feel like going out to the shops or you're not able to, and you might just have a pencil or a pen and maybe a scrap of paper or cardboard somewhere, you'd still be able to do these. You don't need any fancy materials. I'm going to walk you through this process step by step, how to draw from your photo. But the first thing that you'll need to do is go and get yourself a photo. So let's just say we pause the video in a sec and then you go get the photo. So let's pause. Great, so hopefully you've got your photo. You might want to put it side by side with a piece of paper, and I'm going to walk you through the steps. But before we start, I'll show you where we're going with this. What I've done here is I've tried to break down, like we did with the dog the other week, try to break down the picture into a bunch of basic shapes. So this square here more or less represents my body. The head represents my head there. My daughter Maisie, her body from this angle, top part of the body looks like a diamond, and the bottom part makes a vaguely triangular shape. When we've got this down, it doesn't look specific to the people in the photo, but it's a good way of getting the basic shapes and a kind of a map of how to draw in the details from there. So let's begin. You just need a blank piece of paper and something to draw with. Now, the first step, I'm going to get you to do this, then pause the video. The first step is going to be to get your fingers and just look at the figures. Don't look at the whole photo. Just get your fingers and look at the most furthest left, the furthest right. We might call it the west, east, north, south. So the west and the east, and compare it to the north, south, or the up and down. 1, 2. So I can see that the group of figures is twice as high as it is wide. So the first step that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little rectangle that's about about twice as high as it is wide. So let's pause the video and you do that step. Great, now if you've done that, what you need to keep doing when you draw the rest of it is you need to keep imagining that there's that imaginary rectangle around those figures in the photo. Remembering that this line represents the furthest left, this line is the furthest right, so that knee, the top is the hat, and the bottom is that bottom foot there. So if you keep that in mind, then you can also think, okay, so where's the middle part? Like if that's a top and that's a bottom, the middle must be about here. And if that's a left and that's a right, the middle must be about there. So I'm looking at round about Maisie's eyebrow right there. So just keep in mind that you can sort of use that box as a reference. Another way you can do it is you can use other parts of the body. So I can say the head is about a third the width of the total there, and the high it's 1, 2, 3, about a quarter, nearly a bit more than a quarter. So just to take rough measurements. Now let's just pause the video and spend a bit of time just looking for the halfway points and kind of comparing the height of the head and the width of the head to other parts of the figures. So pause. Okay, great. Hopefully you've done that. Now I know it's a little bit confusing, but it will make sense the more we go along. So if I say, the head takes up a good chunk, maybe a third or a quarter this way, and then I kind of sketch that in using my orange texture just so you can see it on the video, but you might use a light pencil or even a pen just very lightly. Then I'm just going to try and imagine if I was simplifying this figure into basic shapes. I could only choose circles, squares, triangles, stuff like that, ovals. Which one would I choose? What's the most like that shape? So my body's not really square shape, unfortunately. It's more blobby. But if I had to choose a shape, it's more like a square than an oval so far. So I'm going to choose a square shape for my upper body there. For my knees here, it's not always triangular, but in this position, yeah, triangular. So I'm going to say, well, that's around about the middle between the top and the bottom. It's around about the middle, but it doesn't come all the way to the bottom, so maybe about there. Now just kind of get a feel for it, I suppose. Estimate, take a punt. Doesn't matter if you get it wrong, you can always change it. So I kind of a triangle like that, and you notice that when I'm looking at the angles, I might kind of line up my texter or pencil or whatever I'm using and kind of see if I'm getting those angles right. Well, not so much on that shoulder there. So just make a start on that, and we'll pause the video just while you start to block in the biggest, most obvious and basic shapes that you can see. Just do 2 or 3 and then we'll come back. Great, so hopefully you've done that. Now the next thing you might notice is when you come to put in the second figure, you want to kind of figure out where it fits in. So if I try to find a place where to start to draw, I can say, well, this side of her head lines up with the side of my ear there. So that gives me an idea. The top of her head comes a bit above, doesn't line up with the knees, it comes a bit above it. So that's an idea too. And then I can sort of compare the size of the head to my head, so it's a bit smaller than that. The body, it's basically like a diamond shape of sorts, and then the bottom elbow lines up with my ankle there, so that gives me an idea too. I might have a look at that angle. That's a bit more vertical than what I was thinking. And that elbow pokes out a bit beyond that leg there. Okay, so that's kind of a basic idea too. When you're drawing heads, it's always a good idea to try and find an axis down the head, because they're not always pointing straight at you, so they might be a bit to the side. An axis sort of shows you the angle and also the middle point between the eyes and the base of the nose. So let's just pause and you can do those steps, lining up one thing in one figure with the thing in another. And now the next step is really just what we did in the first place. So looking at the basic shapes, Maisie's legs here, they kind of make a triangular shape. This leg lines up with what? Oh, maybe the middle of that shoulder. I can say that 2 legs make a kind of a triangle, but they're not in line at the bottom. They're sort of at an angle. One touches the bottom of this square and the other is out here. So I always like to try and simplify things with figures, because figures can be difficult. So I'm going to make that foot into a triangle and this one into a kind of like a little rectangle, like that. Now I've got my axis there. The eyes are always in the middle, and this arm comes up at a bit of an angle, and the hand, I'm just going to draw it like, for the moment, it's more like a square than anything else. And that's my basic map of my figures. So let's just let you catch up with that bit, just putting in the basic shapes for your figures. So once you've done that, the next thing is to go into a lot more concentrated drawing. So what we're going to do is just look at one little point, so identify a point on your drawing, and what I'm going to do is just very slowly keep looking back at the original drawing, the original photograph, and just kind of following the contour around. So it's as if my texture is connected to where my eye is. So I'm looking very often between the drawing and the photo and what I'm drawing, and I'm just very slowly following each contour, each bend, each little curve, and basically just trying to copy it as best as I can and follow that kind of outline around. Now I'm using this big fat texture just so it shows up against the orange texture that I've already used, but you could just be drawing the initial outline with a light pencil outline, and then do a thicker pencil or pen or something over the top. It doesn't really matter, the principle is the same. Just as long as you, in this case, you just keep on concentrating really. You're just trying to draw one little bit at a time. If you try to draw it all, it gets pretty hard. But if you trust that you've spent enough time drawing that initial kind of that orange outline, which is basically the map of where everything's going to go, then you can be pretty confident that if you're just sort of tweaking the contours now and you're just looking at the outlines, that you're not going to go too far wrong, because you've already drawn this little map of the proportions, where all the features go and stuff like that. It's a bit funny looking if I draw it with kind of a Sharpie, but anyway, hopefully it makes it pretty clear and easy to see it. You might notice that I'm not always following the shape of the orange outline at all, and some part of it I'm actually correcting and adding more curves and contours to it. So the orange bits are really just there just to be a guide, but I'm definitely checking it a lot more carefully the second time I come around and start to do the outlines, and then I'm adding the details. So this might not be something that you find all that easy to do the first time, and I just recommend that you try it, about 5 or 6 times before you really make a judgment on it. It's a little bit tricky, to be honest, but if you practice it, something will click in your brain and you'll probably find it gets easier and easier. Pretty much like anything, it does take a little bit of practice. And the other thing is, with the contour drawing, the slower you go, the more time you spend looking, the more accurate it is. So I've kind of rushed through it a little bit here just for the sake of you getting the main idea of how it works. But I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. I hope that you'll get something out of that and try a few drawings. And hopefully I'll see you again next week.